introduce me. This is Andrew Wilkie. He's the Deputy Chief Executive of the Prison Radio Association. And what I normally say about him is that he is the nicest, the hardest working, and the most talented radio producer in the business. Andrew, welcome.
Well, thanks, Phil. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm Andrew, and Phil is the Prison Radio Association's founding chief executive. So the entire story that you're going to hear this morning, Phil has been not only there for all of it, but has really been the key player in all of it. So it's a really great opportunity to hear a bit of history, and in particular, something about how we've managed to work incredibly successfully with colleagues in the Ministry of Justice and in the prison service over that period of time to do something really quite unusual, which has had a really big impact. Phil, do you want to take it away?
Yes, I will, but just say that I've been doing this job for just shy of 20 years, and Andrew Wilkie's been doing the job that he does for about 10 minutes less than I have. So he's been with me every step of the way. Some people describe us as the ant and deck of prison radio, but I wouldn't say that. So he ought to take an awful lot of the credit as well for the work that we've done and the impact that we've had. But yeah, let's kick off. So we are here to talk mainly about National Prison Radio, but also about the wider work of the Prison Radio Association. I want to start just by thanking you all for being here. It's a real honour to talk to you about this stuff. This is my favourite subject, and I could talk all day about it. But I've not got all day, so I'm going to crack on. So National Prison Radio, the inside story. Oh, hang on a minute. Here we go. So we are the Prison Radio Association. Prison Radio Association. We are a charity. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do to get us started. The main thing that we do, the bread and butter, the beating heart of the organisation, is we run National Prison Radio, which is the world's first national radio station for people that live in prisons. We have studios, two main permanent studios. One is in HMP Style, which I don't need to tell you all. I imagine that it's a prison for women in Cheshire, just south of Manchester. And we have studios in HMP Brixton, London's oldest prison. We also make a whole load of podcasts. We're probably best known in the podcasting world for our multi-award-winning Life After Prison with Zach and Jules. We make a range of other podcasts, including one that I love to co-host with Paula Harriott, the amazing Paula Harriott, which is called The Secret Life of Prisons. We also, for more than 15 years, have been a supplier of programmes to the BBC. We make programmes for a range of BBC outlets, mainly for BBC Radio 4. And over the years, here's a flavour of some of the programmes we've made for the BBC. Largely focusing on crime, criminal justice, not exclusively, but largely. And the two big ones in the middle that you can see there are Behind the Crime, which has been recommissioned. I think this year we're making Series 6 and Series 7 of it, expertly produced by Andrew Wilkie. And the one below that is a documentary we made called The Ballad of Scout and the Alcohol Tag, which is one of the most beautiful programmes we've ever made, which was also produced by Andrew Wilkie and our colleague Ellen Orchard. So, moving on. What else do we do? We run a talent development program. We work largely with people that we've worked with inside after they come out to support them with professional development. And we, as part of that 12-week program, we offer a placement at the BBC. BBC is one of our important partners as well. And that is a group of our trainees at the BBC having a tour. We also we run Prison Radio International, so it's a growing global movement of people using audio as a force for good in criminal justice settings around the world. We set that up and we run it as the organisation that launched the world's first national radio station for people in prison. And I should say very clearly and very loudly, in partnership with HMPPS and the Ministry of Justice. As that organisation, we were often approached by people asking for help and support. People wanted to learn from us. We started to learn a lot from other people. And this movement almost started organically. And then we formalised it into Prison Radio International. So there are, I think, more than 80 projects in around 30 countries that are part of our network. I'll come back to that as well. Our vision is a world where life-changing media transforms lives and reduces crime. And our mission, we believe in the power of audio to change lives, and we produce high-quality, solutions-focused radio and podcasts that amplify the voices of people with prison experience. I'm not going to read all of that to you. And I guess the reason why we have a vision and a mission is that we are a charity. So we are known for lots of things. We're known for our podcast. We're known for our BBC programmes. We're known for winning lots of awards. And that might lead people to think that we're a really well-funded, big media organisation, but we are actually a charity. And we thrive on partnerships. We survive on partnerships. Partnerships are a really, really important part of what we do. Here's just a range of our partners. And a big part of our work that we do on National Prison Radio, but with all of our output, is amplifying the messages of other organisations, helping other organisations to reach people living in prisons, to support them through their sentences. And that enriches our content. It supports people that listen to National Prison Radio, but it also helps those organisations deliver deliver on their aims, I guess. So where did it all begin? Where and when did it all begin? So it all began in the early to mid 1990s at Feltham, YOI. Radio Feltham 999, the first prison radio in the UK, was launched, I think, in April 1994. And this was the studio. And I'm going to play you a couple of minutes of a news piece from BBC South East from the launch day. Melissa, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear the audio?
Station went on the air today, the first to be operated inside a prison. It's at Feltham Young Offenders Institution in West London, where it has an audience of 850 inmates. Feltham's had more than its share of bad publicity lately, with 4 suicides in 9 months. The governor believes the radio service will improve communications and morale. Amanda Harper reports.
Good morning, Feltham. As you may know, today is the opening.
Average listeners they're not, but the audience of Radio Feltham is certainly captive. 850 young offenders can now tune into their own radio station. The medium wavelength of 999 has been specially chosen for the service, and its inmates like Rick, a former armed robber turned DJ.
Now all they have to do is tune into Radio Feltham. We'll be there, so we'll be giving them the same like music, and we'll be telling them where we're coming from, because we sit in our cells and we know what it feels like to be sitting in your cell. So we actually express ourselves in a way that they understand.
Staff and prisoners raised £17,000 to set up the station, with some of the equipment donated by other radio stations. Listeners can tune into advice about education, careers, and they'll even have their own agony aunt. Broadcasting between the hours of 5 and 10 o'clock at night coincides with prisoners being locked up.
And the radio really is all that you have, especially on remand, because you find yourself in an empty cell, you've got nothing but a toothbrush. And you have the radio, and that is it. That's your company, that's your life, really. So it's very important that we can communicate with people on the radio.
Feltham was severely criticised in an official report into the suicides of 4 inmates. One of the problems identified was that inmates were too isolated. Governor Joe Whitty acknowledges there's still work to be done, but says the radio will help prisoners communicate with one another.
This actually will be able to put into individual cells the normal things of life, rather than the sort of the plastic gangster syndrome that is often in young offender institutions.
But some people will say, why should you provide a radio service for people who are in here to be punished?
It's my role as a governor to balance the punishment element with the control and with the, for want of a better word, the rehabilitative sort of ideal.
The new station is being seen as a way of breaking the
first ever radio station based inside a prison has gone on air in West London.
So, it's amazing how dated that looks. I should say that the radio station was established by 2 people, Mark Robinson, and then later with help from Roma Hooper. Many of you will know Roma. She's a big name in the sector. She was the co-founder, I guess, of the Prison Radio Association and the chair for many years. She's also, until fairly recently, was the chair of Clinks. But she's done a lot of work in the criminal justice sector and remains an honorary life patron of the Prison Radio Association. And the reason they went into Feltham, I mean, that video said some of it, but really the place was beset with problems, and they thought that developing a radio station for the lads to give them something positive to invest their time in would be useful, not just for the lads creating the programming, but for the lads listening in their cells. And these were the days before there were TVs in all the cells. So for many of the lads at Feltham, this was the only source of, I guess, in-cell entertainment and information and community that they had access to at that point. So Radio Feltham existed on its own for many years with nobody else doing prison radio. And eventually Roma Hooper wrote to the then Director General of the BBC to say, would the BBC be interested in exploring the potential for prison radio to go further, to go beyond Feltham? And the BBC said yes. At that point, I was working as a broadcast journalist at the Jeremy Vine Show, BBC Radio 2, having previously worked as a residential social worker in Manchester, retrained as a journalist, got a job at the BBC. And I'd been at the Vine Show for a couple of years, and then I saw an opportunity advertised for an internal job to become the BBC prison radio manager. So I managed a pilot project. I moved from the studios in London, where I was based with the Vine Show, to Birmingham, and developed 2 prison radio studios in 2 prisons in the West Midlands. One was at HMP Hewell Grange, as was, and the other one was at HMP Birmingham, known locally as Winson Green Prison. And we ran a really successful project. We sort of really tried to focus on what do people in prison want to know? What do they need? What do they need to listen to that will help them through their sentence? And we realised there were lots of different organisations, lots of initiatives, lots of projects and programmes running in prisons that people living in there didn't know about. And we realised the potential and the power that radio had to provide information and support and inspiration to people inside prisons. And we were very, very careful with how we made the programmes. We put the focus on the programmes being presented by people living inside. So I didn't present any of the programmes. I was there setting up the studios, I was teaching, I was supporting, but I was teaching people living in prison how to present the programmes. And something sort of magical happened. At the end of the 9 months, of the end of the 9-month pilot, it kind of became clear. We had a big celebration event inside HMP Birmingham, and it became clear that although there was lots of enthusiasm and excitement about what we were doing, nobody had really thought about what would happen next if the pilot was a success. And it was, I think, that afternoon I realised that I was so passionate about the potential for prison radio to do more than it was doing that I decided to hand my notice in at the BBC, and I became the co-founder of the Prison Radio Association almost 20 years ago. So we established the PRA as a charity. And during the first 18 months in the job, because of the attention that we'd attracted through the pilot project, I was invited by many, many prison governors to go and visit their prisons to talk about the potential for prison radio for them. And I visited more than 50 prisons in the first 18 months. And eventually, one day, I found myself outside this prison, which is HMP Brixton. And I went in for a meeting with the governor, the then Governor Paul McDowell, and I started my big patter about the potential for prison radio to support him and to help create a dialogue between the people running the prison and the people living in the prison. And he stopped me and he said, look, I get it. I used to work in Feltham. I've seen the potential. I want one here. But what I want is for the Prison Radio Association to come in here and to treat this as their headquarters, to set up a flagship station that demonstrates to the rest of the country and indeed the world what prison radio can achieve. And at that point, I said to him, okay, that's great, let's do it. But Paul, we've got a number of conditions. We want you to agree to come into the studio once a week to be part of a programme called Governor's Questions, where you answer questions put to you directly from people in prison. And he said, no problem, I'll happily do that. I said, another thing, Paul, we're not going to show you the questions in advance. We're going to act like proper journalists. We're going to maintain our editorial independence and journalistic integrity. We won't be showing you the questions in advance, no problem. And I said, one more thing, you can't refuse to answer any questions that are put to you. And he said, no problem. Oh, I said, one more thing. We're not going to edit anything. So anything you say will be used on what became Electric Radio Brixton. So he agreed to all of that. We moved in there, and it was at that point that we recruited Andrew Wilkie. So that's a very young-looking Andrew Wilkie, probably about 19 years ago, in the studio of what became Electric Radio Brixton. And I think there might be a little clip of the early days of what was Electric Radio Brixton coming up.
Radio by the prison, for the prison.
Monthly interviews with the governors.
I want to ask you where you see Brixton Prison in 10 years' time.
We knock down the old bits, rebuild new bits.
Get your questions in. Also, get involved in the poetry specialist. Special guest showing interest. And we want your requests for the weekend.
My name is Stevenson, based on C-Wing, Request, Rihanna. Please don't stop the music, because we need some music on this wing badly.
Please don't stop the music.
So I should say, At this point, it was 2007 that we launched Electric Radio Brixton. And we started slowly. We started very carefully learning what to do. We started making an hour a week of radio, and then that increased to an hour a day. And then as we got better and as we developed more resources and were able to employ more staff, we started to produce more content, but always really clear that people living in that prison were at the centre of what we were doing, presenting the programmes and driving the editorial direction. We, in 2009, for the first time, entered what people call the Oscars of the radio industry. They were then called the Sony Radio Academy Awards. They're now called the Radio Academy Awards. And in the first year that we entered, we amazed the industry and the world by winning 4 awards. We won 2 gold awards and 2 bronze awards. And we stole the headlines. Prison radio station steals the limelight from Wogan and Moyles. We were the story of the night, and it was a really special time for us. I think there's a clip here of us winning the awards.
The Bronze Award goes to Electric Radio Brixton. Interview with Jonathan Aitken.
Bronze for Prisoners' Voices.
The Gold Award goes to A Sound Face. This is the one that's going to be in the papers tomorrow. The Gold Award goes to Electric Radio Brixton's Daily Show.
We had a great night that night. So then the next day we hit the headlines, and we were not just in UK national press, but Time Magazine, ABC Australia, CNN. Lots of people were interested in what we were doing, which is fairly interesting because it's quite rare to get positive news stories from within prisons. So that was quite useful. And we used that success, not just the awards, but the positive impact that we could see that we were having inside Brixton Prison. We used that success to take that argument to the Ministry of Justice to say, look at what we're doing with Electric Radio Brixton, changing the lives of the 800 men that live in that prison. And there are more than 80,000 men, women and children living in prisons across the country. And we should be able to get this content, this life-changing content to all of them. So we had lots of meetings, lots of discussions. We put together a number of different proposals, and eventually we managed to persuade the then Justice Secretary, Jack Straw, that the Ministry of Justice ought to invest in the technical infrastructure required for us to take the signal from Brixton and to deliver it to all prisons. And eventually that's what happened. This is just a nice picture of Jack Straw. And what did happen then, because obviously government money was invested in this, and that is publicly available information, and we hit the headlines. So we were on the front page of The Sun the day of the announcement. Pampered lags to get their own radio station beamed into every cell in the country. And that became an interesting thing for us. Our background is media. We have worked at the BBC. We understand how the media works, and we understood the danger of negative headlines. And we were constantly, I guess, for the first 10 years of our existence, worried about negative headlines and what impact that might have if it spooked people in Downing Street or in Westminster. And we knew we were possibly one negative headline away from having the project cancelled. So that focused our energy. It helped us to really, really focus on doing things well, producing content to an incredibly high quality, but also ensuring that we maintained editorial standards. Here, this is a local publication, the Dorset Echo. Don't waste money on a prison radio service. I won't read all that to you, but I guess part of the reason I'm showing you this is because we have to be aware that the work we do is in a very politically sensitive area, and I guess that's part of the reason why it's important for us to maintain independence from the Ministry of Justice and HMPPS, and for us to understand the very complicated feelings that people have around crime and justice. So eventually National Prison Radio was born, the world's first national radio station for people inside prisons. And that was the studio. Electric Radio Brixton became National Prison Radio. But what we also realised at that point was that if we were going to broadcast as a national radio station, we didn't just want to feature the voices of men living in South London. So for the first time, I proactively went and knocked on the door of a prison and went to visit the then governor of HMP Style, Clive Chatterton, and pitched him the idea of us setting up a studio inside HMP Style. And he went for it, and we built a studio in there, I think in 2009, and that enabled us to do some different things. And it was important for us. I think the women in prison make up less than, I think, 4% of the population now. I think it was 5% of the population then, but we considered them to be a really important constituency. We wanted them to be able to express themselves, to talk intelligently and passionately about their experience to other women in prison. But we also thought it was really important for the 95, 96% of people living in prison, men, for them to hear the voices of women as well. And the project at Style has become a really important part of what we do. And it's allowed us to do some sort of really innovative stuff. We did a partnership with the BBC Radio 4 quite a long time ago. We created a really powerful drama called Bound. We spent a week workshopping ideas with women living in the prison, and we created a really powerful radio drama. So National Prison Radio, this is the earliest copy of our schedule that I could find. This is from April 2011. That's what the schedule used to look like. So broadcasting around the clock, concentrating our production resources at key times when we know people are listening, ensuring that the content that we produce targets what people used to often talk about as the 7 pathways to reducing reoffending. So really focusing the content that we produce on telling positive stories and supporting people through their sentences, and thinking carefully about how we could work as a really good partner to the Ministry of Justice. How can we add value to the work that the Ministry of Justice is doing is always at the centre of our thoughts. So this is the schedule as it looked in April 2011, and this is the November 2025 schedule. So it looks a bit swankier, a bit smarter. But we play a range of programming. We've got speech, we play music, we have documentaries, interviews, a whole range of stuff. And we don't expect everyone to listen all the time. We expect people to tune in when their show's on, other things that they like to listen to is on. But the numbers, and I'll come back to the numbers, are phenomenal. The rate at which people tune in.
24 hours of NPR in 2 minutes.
Porridge. The first national breakfast show for prisoners.
Monday to Friday mornings from 7.
Let's go! Yes. Good morning and welcome to the Porridge Show. It's me, your main man, Ali. And you know what time it is?
Cardiff, Brentford, Havre, Holloway, Brixton.
Across England and Wales.
This is National Prison Radio.
Zach and Jules from National Prison Radio's podcast Life After Prison won a gold award at last night's Radio Academy Arias in London.
The Family and Friends Request Show on NPR and online.
Welcome. We have requests coming in from. So we've got Home House, Bristol, Humber, Tameside.
We're broadcasting from behind bars.
Direct to your TV.
From our studios in HMP Brixton
and HMP Style.
NPR Talk.
Real lives, real stories.
Sometimes for us as men as well, it's a lot easier for us to deal with our sadness with anger. So we mask our sadness with anger because it makes us feel more in control.
National Prison Radio Takeover. One day, one jail.
Swinfen Hall is taking over the airwaves this Monday.
It's the HMYOY Swinfen Hall NPR Takeover.
Free flow, bars behind bars.
Supported by Shannon Trust.
Any MC, I'm an old school general. Using a pen to the pen game terrible.
Hi, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jules, and welcome to our brand new podcast from National Prison Radio, Life After Prison.
It's radio by prisoners
for prisoners.
My demons come out to play at night when there's no one in sight. Secrets linger on my mind.
Books unlocked every night at 11.
Diana notices the blood on the floor.
This month's Books Unlocked title is The Fortune Men by Nadifa Mohammed.
So if you can't sleep and you need a bit of company, then join us for some chilled out music and some words to calm your mind.
Dream time.
Dream time on National Prison Radio.
National Prison Radio, through the night.
24 hours of NPR in 2 minutes.
There you go, a flavour of National Prison Radio, 24 hours in 2 minutes. Let me move us on. So why does prison radio work? There are loads of reasons why prison radio works. It's a really great idea and it's a simple idea. But here are 3 big ideas, I think. I think the first is that it's authentic and professional, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these. The second is that there is a clear focus on solutions, on the good, on what works. And the third is editorial independence and journalistic freedom. So I'm going to go through each one of those now. Authentic and professional. So the way that we create programs, the way that we create content, we have a team of very experienced, very dedicated, compassionate, professional radio producers who are working side by side and hand in hand with people living in prison. And it's that professional input that ensures that our editorial standards are high, that our programs are incredibly high quality. But the authenticity, the credibility, comes from the fact that our presenters are all people living in prison. So they know the issues that people care about. They know the questions to ask. They know how to ask the questions and what language to use. And it's that combination that ensures that everything we do hits the mark, really hits the mark. So there is that side of things. A clear focus on the solutions and the good. I think when we first started, we realized that prisons are difficult places to work in. Prisons are difficult places to live in. And if you give somebody a microphone, quite often what they'll want to do is talk about all the bad things that happen in there and the difficult time they're having. And we also realized that that doesn't make particularly compelling audio to listen to. People don't like listening to people grumble and moan on the radio. So we had to think about how we tackled that. And what we realized was that a way of framing things would be to acknowledge the difficulties, to not shy away from the problems that exist, but then to focus on what is being done to mitigate those issues, to fix the problems, who's doing what, and then to apply the same journalistic rigor to looking at that stuff, at looking at what's working, than that as journalists, as media outlets normally news normally focuses on the negatives. So we decided to look at the positives. And I guess an example might be that if somebody's complaining about food in a prison, rather than just complaining about the food, well, let's get the person in who runs the kitchen. Let's get the person in from HMPPS who's in charge of the budget. Let's talk to the audience about how difficult it is to supply food, to cook meals for that many people on a daily basis on such a tight budget. And I think through that process, through the process of teaching people how to be good journalists, to ask forceful questions, but in a diplomatic and polite way, and to seek answers to what's working, something quite magical happened. It became a compelling thing to listen to. It became a compelling thing to be involved in making, but it also resulted in a really fruitful dialogue between the people being held and the people doing the holding. And I think that's been a real key focus of our work. What we didn't realize was that we'd kind of invented something called solutions-focused journalism. Now, solutions-focused journalism is a growing global movement, and we were doing it before it was. So there are lots of outlets doing it now. There is the Solutions Journalism Network. I've recently completed a training course with them. I'm now a qualified trainer of solutions journalism. But there are lots of different people doing it, including the BBC and other outlets around the world are really focusing on constructive journalism or solutions journalism. I'm going to play this to you. It's Jodie Jackson. She's a British campaigner for solutions journalism. She is also a poet, and she can probably say more about solutions journalism and solutions news in 3 minutes than I can. So I'm going to play this to you. It's really compelling. She is talking about news. So everything that she says about news applies to our radio production as well.
The purpose of the news is to engage and inform, empower people to bring about reform, but their words are being lost by the noise of the storm. We hear about disaster, murder, conflict and violence, and after a while this becomes white noise like silence. Because when there's a bias for the negative, we lose becoming sensitive, and instead we become emotionally dead. You see, this negativity has been shown to be destructively informing me, dividing me from society by creating this fear and anxiety. For many, they watch helplessly as if we're damned to be. But that's not the only story of the fate of our humanity. Let's hear about progress, acknowledge solutions. This excess of negativity, it's like mental pollution. When we do see good news, it's misrepresented. We hear cats being saved from trees and the conversation is ended, saved instead for an "and finally." But finally, these stories of possibility are being shown to be a vital story for society. We need to learn about how problems are being solved, issues resolved, for the sake of our souls. Not for ignorant bliss, but because we are better than this. We don't need sugarcoating or positive spins. Again, that's a cynical view that this conversation underpins. And don't get it confused with entertainment, PR or fluff. Enough is enough. It's rigorous journalism reporting on progress, reporting on problems but not ignoring success. We publicise failure, corruption and shame, but when it comes to human potential, it's not treated the same, and the hypocrisy is killing me. Are you kidding me? They point the finger at every other industry, but leave them be. As this excess of negativity increases in velocity, atrocity, chasing more controversy. But where is the nobility in preying on morbid curiosity? I feel cheated, defeated by newspapers' allegiance to profits and clickbaits, regardless of if it generates hate and drums up the nation into a fearful state. Some people find it too much to take, and then the stories become lost because people switch off. But if we want a nation that's engaged and informed, it's time to reform. Make a new norm, empower, inspire, help us achieve higher. Report the good in other people, not just replay their evil. If we witness the unbelievable, it makes it more achievable. A solution seems more feasible. The only option now is to freeze or fall. After all, the truth of the world includes the good and the bad, the happy and the sad. So why would you just tell one half of the story? It leaves us in mourning, unable to see that the new day is dawning. The power lies in us becoming aware, to ensure they take more care about the stories they tell when they look at the world out there. And why should we care? Because the truth is, the news is an organisation that's intrusive of our minds, and it's a matter of time before their words become our thoughts, shaping our opinions more and more. So what we're asking for, as I've said before, is rigorous journalism reporting on progress, reporting on problems but not ignoring success. It may sound idealistic, it's been labelled naive, but let me assure you this is not an ignorant plea. The research says it's obvious, and to ignore it is preposterous. So it's time for the consumers to take a stand, because the industry will listen to us.
I thought it was worth playing you that. I've seen it 100 times and I enjoy it every time I listen to it. Editorial independence and journalistic freedom. I think this is a really important point, and I've touched on it earlier on, but I think part of the reason why people living in prison believe in what we do is because they are given an opportunity to have a voice and to ask difficult questions of people in power. And I guess this goes back to, you can see on that slide, there's Jack Straw in Radio Felton being interviewed, Paul McDowell, again, the then governor of HMP Brixton, in his regular slot, Governor's Questions. And then two older pictures there, the former Lord Chancellor, Robert Buckland, did a long interview with us during COVID, which was, I guess, quite pivotal in terms of how we managed through that very difficult time, how people in prison received information from HMPPS and the MOJ during that incredibly difficult time. And also you can see there Amy Rees on our podcast, the Life After Prison podcast, The Sit Down. But really important that we are able to ask hard questions to people in power, and that they are able to have an opportunity to talk directly to our audience. And as I touched on earlier, that has resulted in a really fruitful dialogue, and it's a really, really important part of the work that we do and part of our success. What's next? What about all the awards? Okay, so one of the things we are known for is winning lots of awards. Every year we have won a range of national and international awards, largely for the radio programs that we make, also for sort of various charity awards. There's a list of awards. I think that's most of the awards we won between 2008 and 2024. It's not completely up to date. Here are some more. 2024, 2025. We've actually won some more since then as well. And I think, why is it important? I mean, we spend a bit of time and energy entering awards, and I think it's important for a variety of reasons. I think it's important that the staff team, the Prison Radio Association staff team, there are now 30 people that work for the Prison Radio Association, and many of them spend lots of time inside prisons when they could be in swanky radio studios outside. It's important for them to know they're part of something special, that the programs we're making aren't just changing lives, but they are actually very, very high quality, respected by the industry that we work within. That's important. It's important for the people living in prison that make the programs, that they feel like they're part of something special. It's important for our audience. It's also really important for our partners. And the most important of our partners is HMPPS. And it's really, really good that that we pull them into the kind of magical world of radio, and that they can see that they're part of something special. And we are a charity, so we have to go out and attract funding. And it's really useful to be able to talk to our funders about the fact that we make great programs. In the early days, we used to enter our programs. And increasingly, in more recent years, we've shifted our focus into entering people that make programs with us. that have spent time in prison, that we're entering them for awards. And we've had some real success with that in recent years. One notable example of that is Scout Sophia Bolton, whose documentary that I mentioned earlier on won a range of gold awards, national and international. And Scout is a phenomenal talent. Scout is such a talent that they were invited to present Pick of the Week on BBC Radio 4, which is a huge honour. So you can listen to that if you want to search for that. That's still available. It went out last Sunday, I think, or the Sunday before. But it's a great listen. And this is just to say the awards are wonderful, but they are just the icing on the cake. They are the glitter. The most important thing for us is the impact. And the numbers are impressive. So we know that 85% of people say listening to National Prison Radio makes them more aware of support services. 91% say NPR helps them feel more motivated to change. We know that people listen. Over the years, we've done lots of research about our audience, and we know that on a regular basis, around 90% of people that live in prison listen for an average of about 9 or 10 hours a week, which is phenomenal for any radio station. It really is. We have these numbers are old, but we are National Prison Radio is available on the in-cell technology variously. I can't remember what it's currently called. Is it called the Content Hub? Andrew's going to chip in. Launchpad, of course it is. And the numbers that we get on Launchpad are absolutely phenomenal. We can come back to that later in the Q&A if you're interested in hearing more about it. And the content that we make now outside of prisons, our podcast content, is making a huge difference. So we took everything we knew about making radio for people inside, and we applied that to the podcast that we make for people who have left prisons and people that care about them. And the numbers are amazing. And the team that we have doing that are doing incredible work. And our impact globally. So again, these figures are out of date, but we have a network of more than 80 projects now in more than 30 countries. And we make a real difference supporting people, bringing people together, sharing best practice, and learning from other people in other jurisdictions. And I was delighted recently to be invited by the Radio Academy at their annual Radio Academy Festival to have a conversation with Louis Theroux about the work we're doing internationally. And I should say, this is very important, that the Secret Life of Prisons podcast, which goes out every Monday, on Monday, the 22nd of December, will feature that conversation. So if you're interested in hearing Louis Theroux ask me about Prison Radio and Prison Radio International, please do listen to that. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. I think I'm going to take a breath now. This is now time for you to ask us questions, and Andrew Wilkie is going to join us for that. And I've noticed, and you can probably see on the screen, Faye Dunn is also with us. Now, Faye is a real success story for the Prison Radio Association. We first met Faye. Sorry to talk about you like you're not here, Faye. We first met you when you were serving a sentence in HMP style, and you became a really, really important part of the team, the National Prison Radio team inside. And when you got out of prison, I think about 18 months ago. Yeah. You started working for us, and then you worked part-time at first, but you were so good we had to give you a full-time job straight away. And you do so many different things, and you do it all incredibly well as supporting the production of the Secret Life of Prisons podcast. So Andrew and Faye and I are available to answer any and all questions you have for the next 18 minutes, I think we've got. So please, I don't know how we're going to manage this process. Do people put their hands up, Andrew? Is that how we're going to do this? Or just chip in, just shout?
I think people can put their hands up, or if you want to put it in the chat, I'm looking at the chat and I can relay any questions that come through there as well.
I'll go.
Is that Melissa?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hi Melissa.
Hi. Well, thank you for such an extraordinary presentation, and what a fascinating story. And I was lucky enough to meet Andrew at the Arias this year, where I was a judge, and I headed over. Your reputation precedes you. I used to work a lot with Steve Orchard, who I know used to work with you. And so my question, I guess, is: you've achieved so much. What is next? What have you got coming over the next 10 years? What are your aims and ambitions for this?
You're going to take that one, Andrew. Go on.
I can take that. Yeah, I mean, I think Phil mentioned before that we're a charity, and it's a very, very difficult time for charities right now. There's lots of transformation, change, shrinkage, frankly, in the world of charities. So, and we're not immune from that. So really, our objectives over the next few years are to make sure that we're sustainable. There's a couple of ways that we can do that. I mean, we're extremely grateful to the Ministry of Justice, who have supported us over many, many years, and that support is fundamental. We couldn't do what we do without that partnership. We also are looking at new ways to raise funds, because grant funding is becoming more and more difficult to come by, and in particular, the one sort of stream of income that works for us really well is our commissions from other broadcasters, so from the BBC. So Phil mentioned a couple of the programmes that we've made, and you saw that slide earlier on. People, I think, and particularly the BBC, want informed, intelligent coverage of the world of criminal justice, and in particular, they want to hear from people who know firsthand what it's like to be in prison, to have received a criminal conviction, to serve a sentence, and to come out of it the other side. So we take those sort of solutions-focused principles that Phil was talking about, and we put them into that broader arena of public information, essentially, about the world of crime and justice. So we're not a campaigning organisation. We're an organisation that makes radio programmes, that makes media, that makes podcasts. So we really want to grow that. But frankly, it's all about trying to put ourselves on a sustainable footing over the next few years. So the challenges are real, and they're real for all organisations like ours in this sector and in others.
Thank you.
So Louise has sent a question, which is, how do people listen in shared cells? Do they have headphones? How do they negotiate if one person wants to watch TV and the other wants to listen on the radio? Faye, I'm wondering if you've got some experience of that.
I don't mind answering that one for you, Andrew. It's a fairly simple answer. It's about compromise. And it's just like if somebody wanted to watch BBC or somebody wanted to watch ITV. And unfortunately, not everybody is always going to get along when they're sharing a cell in such confined spaces. But what people tend to find is you do compromise. I know there's a lot of issues around overcrowding and prisons and things like that, but you tend to find people who are sharing a cell together will have an element of compromise, because they want the easiest life as possible, because they know it's difficult enough when they're out on the wings, so they don't want a difficult life with the padmate when they're locked behind the door. So to answer it, there's no real answer to it. It's just all boils down to compromise and kind of understanding your padmate's needs and appreciating that not everybody's always going to get along. So the radio, what you'll tend to find is people will probably want certain shows on at certain times, and then there'll be TV on at other times. So yeah, I think compromise is the one word to answer that.
Although I'd also say, why would anyone want to listen to anything else? And one quite important element, you heard a few sort of requests and shout outs on the radios, on the clips that we heard before. We make a really big effort to mention as many prisons as we can, shout out as many people as we can, visit as many prisons as we can to record content. So when you listen to our radio station across a week or a month, you will hear dozens and dozens of prisons mentioned. You'll hear about what's going on in prisons across the country. That's really important, because ultimately, really, what people want to do is hear themselves mentioned on the radio. So we get 43,000 messages from our listeners every single year. The vast majority of those are shout outs and requests for songs, but sometimes as well, they're people telling us about their experiences, their stories, because they want other people to learn from those experiences. So it's quite a collaborative effort, and we're quite community focused in what we do. And I think that means that, you know, it's never an odd thing to want to listen to National Prison Radio if you're in a cell. It's like the thing that you do.
I think also, sorry, I forgot to say, if people have got the launch pad in the cells as well, so people will have their own individual laptops as well, and then in that instance, yeah, they'd plug in the headphones that they can purchase from canteen, and then they can both kind of go off into their own world and listen to what it is they want to listen to. But yeah, as Andrew said, you get a lot of people listening in because they want to hear either their prison mentioned or a shout out for themselves or their own song request on. So
I want to just jump in and say something. You'll see on the slide that my name's there and Andrew's name's there and Faye's isn't, and that's because I didn't know Faye was going to be in this meeting. So Faye, apologies to you for not including you, but I'm really glad you're here, and you can all see what value Faye adds to the organisation. Shall I read a question, Andrew, that's there? So this is from Bailey Hills. How easy, difficult is it for people to get involved? Is there a tough vetting process or application to get in touch and get involved in producing shows, creating content? Just thinking, I've visited some prisons and there are jobs and roles that are a lot more desired than others, but equally there's a lot fewer of those roles. So it's harder for people to get involved unless someone leaves that role. What is your reach beyond those listening in terms of people getting involved or training, learning opportunities? So yeah, Andrew, Faye, do you want to talk about that? How do we vet people? How do people apply? How do people get involved? Not just as producers and presenters on National Prison Radio, but beyond that as well. I guess the takeover stuff you mentioned.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So, I mean, for 20 years we've built a specialism around making radio in prisons in a high security environment, and we take those responsibilities really, really seriously. So we will always work with the local security teams in Brixton and Style, for example, where we have our bases, and we will recruit people based on risk assessments, and we work with the security teams in those prisons to develop and manage those risks. Broadcasting is not a zero risk game. That headline that Phil showed from The Sun was more about government investment than anything that was going on in a prison. But we all know that things that happen in prisons can end up in the newspapers, and those headlines can sometimes misrepresent the activities that take place in prisons and can sometimes be really damaging. So we take those responsibilities really seriously, and then therefore there is a very tough vetting process. There is also, in terms of the application process, that's very important because we want our workplace to be as much like a workplace as any other workplace. So people apply for a job, they get interviewed by a couple of members of our staff team, and it's a formal application process as you would go through if you were applying for a job anywhere. That's part of the experience, and if you get the job, then you get regular appraisals. Like in a normal job, you get regular feedback. You have a line manager, so one of our staff team will line manage you. You'll get an exit appraisal, if that's possible, when you leave our employment. So it's very much like a normal job, but one that takes place in a high security environment. And therefore, yes, we do absolutely stick to, quite those very serious security frameworks.
Super. Thank you for the question, Bailey. Next question here is from Georgie Boone. Firstly, I just want to say congrats on your massive success. Thank you. It's so inspirational for people who want to make a positive change in the prison service. I love your ethos about positive journalism too. 2 questions, if possible. I think that's possible. How do you choose presenters for your shows? And how might professionals keen to speak on radio shows, podcasts get involved, or do you approach them?
Shall I take that one?
Go on.
So how do we choose presenters for our shows? Well, I mentioned the sort of recruitment process earlier on. As part of that recruitment process, we'll get a sense of what things people are interested in, what their personal experience amounts to, what listeners might be able to learn from that experience. So we'll work with the people we have, and one of the joys about doing this job is that we have a revolving cast of presenters, and people come and go, new people come in, they bring new ideas and they bring new experiences. So we'll always work with that. So our talk show, the way we make our programs is that this is slightly sort of industry-ish rather than broadcast industry-ish rather than prison industry-ish, but I'll explain. So we work very strongly with formats rather than rather than focusing on the presenters themselves. So on radio, most programs that you see in the listings will be, the title of the program will be the name of the presenter. On our radio station, that's not the case. Instead, what we do is we build program formats where we can drop any presenter into that format. So the features will remain the same. You'll get the same sorts of quizzes or information or whatever at the same time each day or each week. The presenters might very well change, and the focus of the programs might very well change. But that's important because it's we've got to prepare for the unexpected. And as we all know, people sometimes leave with zero notice. And if you're a radio station, that's a really difficult challenge. No other radio station in the world, I don't think, would have to deal with the challenge of not really knowing 100% certainly that your presenters are going to still be with you the following day. So we work with the people we have, and we build strong formats to fit them in. And then the question about how might professionals keen to speak on the radio get involved, I assume you're talking about professionals working within the justice system, or who work with people in prison. We are always looking for guests to feature on the radio. So it's not just serving prisoners who are on the airwaves. We want to draw knowledge, advice, information from partner agencies across the sector. And we've got a resident GP, Dr. Linda, who's an experienced prison GP. We're working with a resident historian who's an expert in the history of criminal justice to develop some features around the history of prisons and crime and justice, and to look at how crime used to be dealt with in different times. So we work with a range of professionals, and we're always looking for good people who are keen to talk and share.
I'm going to jump in and just say we've got less than 5 minutes left, and I think it would be silly of us. I wasn't aware that Faye was going to be here, but seeing as you are here, Faye, do you mind if I ask you just what difference did being involved in National Prison Radio make to your time inside? What difference has it made to your life after getting out of prison? And what do you think the main impact of National Prison Radio and the work that we do as a charity is in the wider ecosystem?
Well, first and foremost, Phil, it's made every difference to me. So if I go back to when I was serving my sentence inside HMP style, did I ever think I was going to be presenting on a radio? Definitely not. But when I was given the opportunity to go into the radio station for the first time, there was no looking back. It wasn't just the skills that I learned in there in terms of the editing and producing, presenting shows. It was everything from building back up my confidence, giving me an outlet to kind of escape from general everyday prison life, feeling as though I was treated as a colleague by members of National Prison Radio staff, as Andrew's just alluded to, in saying kind of you have a line manager. You get appraisals, things like that. You kind of feel as though you're living a normal life again for that time period when you're in the studio. And then for me to be offered full-time employment a couple of months after being released, it's done everything for me. It's given me a new lease of life. It's, as I'm quite honest in saying, it's probably prevented me, the biggest reason that's prevented me from going back to potentially committing crime again. And there's a number of reasons for that. First and foremost, the main reason is because I now see myself as a role model to other people who are living inside prison. And I live and breathe every day, making a difference to other people's lives and being that role model. To show people who are living in prison that life's not over, that there's life there's light at the end of the tunnel, and if I can achieve what I'm achieving on a daily basis, then anybody who's currently living in prison, whether that be through National Prison Radio or any form of employment, can also achieve it. And then secondly, because yourself, Andrew, Abby, and the team gave me an opportunity and bought into me, and because I see the passion, and I think I said this yesterday, I've never experienced an employer who is genuinely, passionately cares about its employees. most employers, whether they be charities or whether they be commercial employers, from what I've worked with in the past, they've got an interest in their bottom line and making funds, whereas I believe PRA, fundamentally, their first thing they want to achieve is making sure they're making an impact on people's lives, whether it be the people living in prison, their friends and family, or whether it be their employees. So it's made a huge difference in my life, and it's more importantly, it's made a huge difference in my children's life, because they've got their mum back and they're proud of what I do every single day, and I've got a smile on my face doing it.
We're all proud of you, Faye.
Yeah, thank you.
Just before we finish, there's a feedback QR code on the screen, so please do give in your feedback. Also, I mentioned that we're a charity and that we are looking for ways to sustain ourselves into the future. If you are someone who likes to give to charity and you want to make a really big difference to us, you're very welcome to give to the Prison Radio Association. And if you donate next week, so after the 2nd of December, your donations are doubled because we're part of the Big Give. So prison.radio/Big Give is the link. Please feel free to share it with everybody you know and tell them all about how great we are.
What is it, Andrew?
Prison.radio/Big Give. Very easy to remember.
Thank you for tuning in to this special edition of the National Prison Radio HMPPS Insights Festival show. Thanks all so much.